Here on the West Coast, we don't have the Smithsonian. What we do have is the Museum of Flight. It promotes itself as the aviation museum of the West Coast, the largest independent, non-profit air and space museum, with over 175 air and spacecrafts, tens of thousands of artifacts, a library, and more. It is one of the most impressive aviation museums which I have been to. I almost became a volunteer docent at the museum a little while back. Being the youngest there and able to really nerd out about planes with others was quite fun. At one of my trainings, something caught my attention. During one of the tours I was shadowing, what was almost like a mock rap battle started while standing between the museum's P-51D Mustang and the P-47D Thunderbolt. Pitted against each other in this rap battle at the old folks' home, both planes were given equal opportunity to dish out their various disses and slanders. This little show of sorts ended with the tour guide proclaiming an ambiguous, but very clearly one-sided, announcement that the P-47 was the victor in this fight, claiming that it was just misunderstood, and the facts showed supremacy over the more well-known younger sister, the P-51D. This got a rouse out of the crowd, as it stood contrary to most novice airplane enthusiasts. I witnessed throughout the staff the same idea, and although it was obviously an inside joke of sorts, after seeing it represented in one of their primary tours, it got me thinking. Did they have a point? I know a lot about the history of both aircraft, and many memorable stories told by pilots on both sides. However, I unfortunately am not much of a, actually kind of guy. A lot of their arguments stemmed from statistical data on both aircraft. Less a theoretical battle between Batman v Superman or Tony v America's Greatest Ass, and more two angry accountants screaming at each other from opposite sides of a conference room, loud and full of numbers. So that is today's topic, a battle of the ages. Two teams of nerds going head-to-head in a battle that will prove very little and amount to a fart in the wind. The P-51D Mustang versus the P-47 Thunderbolt. Now, before we start, I want to be as transparent as possible. And I hate to admit it, especially since my field, history, is one of academic integrity and is upheld to the highest of scholarly standards. But I have a bias. I am a total simp for the P-51D. It was, is, and forever will be my favorite airplane. And I know it's not original, it's very vanilla, but so is chocolate ice cream. And I don't hear anybody getting judged over liking their Cocoa Blast ice cream. Anyway, let's begin. Okay, so what do I mean by battle? Well, I want to stay true to the original prompt, because that's what tour guides are telling museum goers. Now, I like drama just as much as the next socially awkward bean, but in no way am I trying to attack the museum or any of the wonderful volunteer docents who spend countless selfless hours providing accurate and entertaining knowledge on one of my favorite subjects to the masses. Yet. No, seriously though, I am not throwing shade at the museum. As someone who has vehemently trained in seeking to understand, all I want from this video is to see for myself where the museum's coming from. And if you trash talk my bay, my apple of the sky, then they're all... So what exactly did they talk about? Well, they focused in a few categories. General specifications, they discussed the speed, power, and durability. How well either was used in the hands of pilots, that's through usage and Medal of Honor participants. And finally, how good was it in actuality? That's the how many kills one got over the other playground argument. I believe that there are some gaps here, so to get the greatest, most accurate picture on the topic, I'm going to add just a few things. First, I want to discuss specifications. Let my true nerd side shine bright. We will discuss usage, the most important of all. No, like seriously, remember what is discussed in this section. Speed, maneuverability, durability, power. Then we will discuss number of Medal of Honor recipients, and we will end with the actual kill count. When discussing this, they talked about the P-47 generally, meaning all the variants, and the P-51D specifically, and so I will attempt to do the same. At the end of all of that, I am confident that we can have a proper answer to which craft is better, and maybe even you can stand up proudly and announce to your whole tour group that they are wrong. Or maybe right. Please don't actually, though. We will give each plane a chance in each category before moving on, giving some sort of score at the end so that we can tally it all up and see which one is the best. Let's start off with the P-51 Mustang for no particular reason. The outdated P-40 was originally sought after by the British in 1940, but they were convinced instead to take a look at one of North America's newest designs, the P-51. In 117 days, the prototype was proposed, designed, built, and flown. The aircraft in its early days looked much different, but fulfilled the RAF's requirements for a more heavily armed fighter plane, which could operate effectively above 20,000 feet. However, the British typically used the Mustang Mark I's in the ground attack and reconnaissance roles. This was mostly because of its longer range than other fighters and its effectiveness below 15,000 feet. Just like an Instagram influencer, the U.S. Army Air Force would initially not take kindly to the aircraft, having to be convinced into using it via 2 free early model P-51s. Following the upgrade to the aircraft's engine, the P-51, the US AAF's newest mainstay fighter plane, at least in the European theater. Most importantly, it could perform the vital escort mission of heavy bombers to and from a target, an issue which had been plaguing Allied bombers since early in the war. The bombers' little friends helped curtail losses as bombers no longer had a window of vulnerability during their missions. As a dedicated escort fighter, squadrons tasked with this job, like the 351st Fighter Squadron of the 353rd Fighter Group, switched from P-47s to P-51s. The P-51D Mustang began to arrive in Europe by spring of 1944. It was a powerful, long-range fighter plane whose base could be translated into an effective ground attack aircraft when needed. For the score category, I give the P-51 1 glow-up out of 10. The most widely produced U.S. fighter of the whole war, at 15,683 produced total, was reportedly first designed on the back of an envelope during a meeting in 1940. So for all of you doodling during the conference call, wondering why you haven't gotten that promotion yet, skill issue. Up your game. The design intention was to fit the largest, most powerful, air-cooled radial engine into a heavily armed, single-seat fighter. The P-47Bs began to see action in 1943. The plane was twice as heavy as most other fighters of the time, and not as nimble, which made pilots hesitant at first. Over time, pilots would learn how best to fly the aircraft against the smaller, more nimble enemy fighters, and turn the Thunderbolt into a formidable fighter plane, more than capable of holding its own. The P-47 was used for escort of heavy bombers, but did not have the range to get them all the way to their target. Instead, they could escort them part of the way, and then, when the bombers got close to home, escort them back. The P-47 was also used for long-range sweeping ground attacks on mainland Europe early during the war. Its more robust nature, plus additional firepower, did give it an edge over many other ground attack aircraft being flown at the time. Although a fine fighter and all-right fighter escort, the aircraft was certainly more well-suited in its ground attack role. So significant was its participation in accurate and constant ground attacks that the aircraft is most remembered for this job. The P-47 took up the bulk of fighter-bomber missions toward the end of the war. For its usage score, I give the P-47 1 chunky boy out of 5 cat ladies. Again, remember this category. It will be important later. The P-51D was powered by the Packard-built Rolls-Royce Merlin V1650 engine, producing 1,695 horsepower. It had a max speed of 440 miles per hour and a cruising speed of 275 miles per hour. It had a range of 1,000 miles, 1,400 miles with external tanks, which, fun fact, they are really light when they don't have any fuel in them. It had a ceiling of 41,900 feet. I give it one fast boy out of 10. The P-47 was powered by the Pratt & Whitney R2800-59 double wasp engine, capable of producing 2,430 horsepower. It had a max speed of 430 miles per hour and a cruising speed of 350 miles per hour. Its range was 1,000 miles and a ceiling of 42,000 feet. Score? Even faster boy out of 10. The P-51D had impeccable handling, especially at altitude. It was extremely fast. They went toe-to-toe with just about every foe in the air, even jets. It was more than capable against Bf-109s, Focke-Wulf FW-190s, and Japanese A6M Zeros. Score? 1 badass out of 7. The P-47 was a capable fighter, but by no means was it super graceful. This being said, imagine the P-47 to be a football player. If you get the drop on them, sure, you might be able to score a hit, maybe even a good hit, like right to the balls. But after that, you have now just pissed off something that is larger, faster, and can hit far harder than you can. Planes like the Focke-Wulf FW-190 at or below 15,000 feet, or the Nakajima Frank were more agile, but the P-47 wasn't entirely one-sided in these fights. Over time, pilots learned how to use the plane's massively powerful engine to outproduce energy that its foes could not keep up with. This is how the P-47 beat its smaller adversaries. Well, that and the fact that it's hailing down thousands of 50 caliber rounds onto anything it looks at. Score? Despite having an inline liquid-cooled engine and a lightly armored radiator, the P-51 was tolerant of battle damage. Sorry, I don't really have much else to say in the matter. The P-47's air-cooled engine and massive amounts of armor plating allowed it to be a rugged beast. The tubing for the turbo supercharger, which ran underneath the pilot, created a crumble cushion, which gave further protection to pilots during emergency landings. Score? This guy. Out of 10. The P-51D carried 6 50 caliber machine guns. It could also carry 10 5-inch rockets or 2,000 pounds of bombs. The P-47 was a heavy hitter, carrying 6 or 8, depending on the variant, 50 caliber machine guns and either 10 rockets or 2,500 pounds of bombs. There are only 2 pilots who would earn the Medal of Honor while flying P-51 Mustangs. The first was then Major James H. Howard on January 11, 1944, over Germany. The second is then Major William A. Shomo on January 11, 1945, over the Philippine Islands. There are also only 2 pilots who would earn the Medal of Honor while flying P-47 Thunderbolts. The first is Neil E. Kirby on October 11, 1943, in the Pacific Theater. Unfortunately, our 11th dates end here, although it would have been cool if they all happened on the 11th. The second is Raymond L. Knight on April 24th to the 25th, 1945, over the skies of Italy. There won't be a score here because I feel as though the bravery of all these men are equal and therefore cannot be scored. Plus it's a tie. 281 pilots who flew in Mustangs would qualify as aces, more aces than any other Allied aircraft can claim. The Mustang is also credited with incredible feats of aerial combat. For example, in October 1944, Lieutenant Urban L. Drew shot down 2 Me-262 jet fighters in one day. In Europe alone, the plane flew 213,873 sorties, destroying 4,950 enemy aircraft. It has a kill ratio of 11-1, or 19-1, or 9-1. It was challenging finding an exact answer. Pretty good. The P-47 boasts an impressive 0.07% loss rate and an aerial kill ratio of 4.6 to 1. Of the 15,683 P-47s made, only 3,499 were lost in combat. The craft accounts for 7,000 enemy aircraft destroyed, more than half of them in the air. From D-Day to VE Day, the Thunderbolt accounted for 86,000 railway cars destroyed, 9,000 locomotives, 6,000 armored fighting vehicles, and 68,000 trucks. P-47s flew 500,000 sorties. Pretty good, out of 5. Who's left? Okay, a typical zonked history class worth of people. Oh, and some trickling in from the start of the video. Hello, welcome back. Don't be surprised when you don't do well on the test. Oh yeah, there is a test at the end of this. Not really, please stay. Let's take a peek at the score. Okay. Alrighty. I'm gonna crunch the numbers here. And... ha! Get pranked. I said that usage was the most important category, and here's why. See, it is difficult to say whether one of these planes is better than another one. And no, it's not because I lost, or my plane isn't as good, or whatever. Okay, shut up. No, it's simply got to do with when they entered combat and what either was used for. For all intents and purposes, neither was used for the same role, and one got to enter combat far sooner than the other. The P-47 entered combat while still being relatively close to its later models, and wanted. The P-51 was unwanted at first, and then had radical changes up until the D model, and even then, there were the much faster K and H models later on. The P-47 saw a time where there were far greater numbers of German aircraft in the skies compared to when the P-51D started patrolling the skies. One argument I've heard was that the P-47 got overall more kills, and to that I say, well, no duh. The P-47 was a fantastic ground attack plane, just as much as it was a great fighter plane. In fact, its ground attack capabilities is what it's remembered for. The A-10 isn't called the Mustang, it's called the Thunderbolt II. It isn't a fighter, but a ground attack aircraft, just like the P-47 was. The P-47 excelled in this role. It was rugged, fast, could dive really well, pack one hell of a punch, and could then defend itself when needed. The P-51 was an excellent escort plane. And before I hear anybody start saying, well, the P-47 shot down more planes and escorted bombers too, shush, hush, shh. You can't consider yourself a good escort if you escort the president to a large public bathroom just to wait outside and hope he comes back. The P-51 could. It fulfilled a fighter role that no other plane could, and did one hell of a job of it, going toe-to-toe with anything it met in the sky, shooting down just about everything. It could do ground attack, sure, but it wasn't necessarily designed to do so, and therefore not only didn't rack up as many kills as the P-47, but had a partner who could do that better while also not needing an escort. If you are a general, why in the world would you not send your tried and true P-47s to get the job done? Similarly, why would you keep your P-51s at home and send P-47s to exclusively escort bombers if they're such an amazing plane? You wouldn't, just like they didn't. The stats are the way they are because of the history of the planes, their designs, and military tactical decisions. No one plane was better than the other based on these pieces of information. Merely that both performed duties which almost 50-50 helped bring an end to the war. Now, I will give the museum this. If this was a tabletop game or a card game, then statistically speaking, the Thunderbolt wins. But life isn't a tabletop game. Thunderbolt pilots learned how to take their heavy, sluggish fighter plane and turn it into a formidable foe against their more nimble adversaries, just like how P-51D pilots learned how to take their nimble, high-altitude fighters and attack ground targets with them. To treat the stats like game stats is to forfeit the ability of pilots to do amazing things in planes that may not be designed to do those things. Do I think tours need to know any of this? Not really. I'd like for them to, but I don't think it is necessary. What do I hope comes out of this fun little rap battle that may challenge someone's perspective, just like it did for me? Well, it's for somebody to go off and do their own research, learn something new, maybe even see this video, and just like all of you, get to learn something new with me. And that is it. Thank you so much for watching. If you've gotten all the way here and you're watching all of the sources, thank you so much. I'm still getting the hang of everything. This is the first video where I didn't use PowerPoint and a cursed way of making it, so I hope you liked it. Let me know if you want to see something, and I'll see what I can do. Until next time, bye-bye.